I want you to just think back for a second.
Yeah.
Have you ever walked away from a conversation with someone, maybe it was, a partner or a friend or even a boss, and you just feel entirely overwhelmingly responsible for something that, deep down wasn't actually your fault?
Right. That feeling.
Or maybe you've had that, like, creeping, insidious feeling where you actually start to doubt your own memory. You start to think, like, wait, did I actually say that? Am I the one who's going crazy here?
It is a profoundly unsettling experience. I mean, when you start questioning your own grip on reality based on someone else's narrative,
Yeah.
you are stepping into very, very dangerous psychological territory.
Yeah.
And that disorienting flavor of confusion, it isn't an accident. It's an architecture.
And architecture, I love that word for this because, it implies design.
Exactly.
And that design is exactly what we are dissecting today. So if you are nodding your head right now listening to this, pull up a chair. We are doing a deep dive into a really fascinating breakdown from a true crime and dark psychology channel called Obscure Case Files.
Specifically, we're looking at a script of theirs focusing on 7 calculated manipulation tactics that narcissists use to control the people closest to them.
And it's such an important topic.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to completely strip away the casual, everyday way we just kind of throw around the word narcissist.
Right, the buzzwords.
Exactly. We're moving past the pop psychology buzzwords to look at the real clinical psychological weapons deployed in these dynamics. And just a quick warning up front, stick with us through to the end, because the 7th and final tactic we'll cover is the one almost no one sees coming.
It's the most dangerous one.
It really is. It's like the trap door that makes escaping this cycle incredibly dangerous. So I guess let's start by unmasking the behavior itself.
Yeah, we really have to establish what we are actually dealing with here because, well, our culture has completely diluted the concept of narcissism.
Oh, totally. Like everyone's a narcissist now, right? Right. People use it to describe, a bad date who talks about themselves too much, or like a vain celebrity taking too many selfies.
Yeah, just hogging the mirror at the gym.
Exactly. But true clinical narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, as it's recognized in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, it operates on a totally different level of intentionality and harm.
Okay, so what does the DSM actually say about it?
Well, it outlines several criteria, but they fundamentally rest on 3 really destructive pillars. So first, you have a persistent, inflexible pattern of grandiosity.
Let's pause on grandiosity for a second because I think people confuse that with just, like, having a big ego.
Yeah, they do.
But it's deeper than that, isn't it? It's not just thinking you're great at your job. It's more like a fixed delusion of inherent superiority.
It's a structural necessity for their psyche. I mean, this grandiosity is in healthy self-esteem, right?
Yeah.
Healthy self-esteem is rooted in reality, and it can withstand criticism.
Yeah.
A narcissist's grandiosity is like a fragile, inflated balloon that requires constant 247 protection. They genuinely believe they are fundamentally different, special, and entitled to treatment that regular rules just don't apply to.
Wow.
Which, feeds directly into the second pillar. An overwhelming, insatiable need for admiration.
Insatiable.
Completely.
Yeah.
Think of it as a bucket with a massive hole in the bottom. No amount of praise or love or validation will ever fill it up, which is exactly why they are constantly seeking new sources of it.
And then there's the third pillar, which, looking at the source, seems to be the engine driving all the abuse we're going to talk about today. The complete lack of empathy.
Yes. But we have to distinguish between cognitive empathy and effective empathy here. This is crucial.
Wait, there are different types of empathy.
Oh, yeah. So a highly manipulative person often has excellent cognitive empathy, meaning they can read your emotions perfectly. They know what makes you tick, what makes you sad, what makes you feel loved.
So they get the data.
Exactly. They get the data, but they completely lack effective empathy.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning they don't actually care that you are sad. They don't feel any shared emotional resonance or guilt or remorse. Other people are simply not viewed as fully realized human beings with their own inner lives.
That's chilling.
It is. Other people are just instruments. They are tools to be used to regulate the narcissist's own self-esteem.
Okay, so we treat narcissism like it's just, someone being a bit arrogant, but based on this script, it's actually like a predator wearing camouflage.
That's a great way to put it.
And that camouflage is usually charm. I mean, you don't catch flies with vinegar, right? You need honey.
You absolutely do.
These individuals, they don't walk around with warning signs on their foreheads. They are often the most charismatic, magnetic people in the entire room.
And that charm is highly cultivated. I mean, from an evolutionary psychology perspective, Humans are wired to follow confident, charismatic leaders.
Right.
So a narcissist learns very early on that charm is the ultimate currency. It gets them access, it gets them resources, and most importantly, it gets them the benefit of the doubt.
Which they use a lot.
Exactly. But it's really crucial to understand that we're dealing with a spectrum here. Statistics estimate that about 1 to 5% of the general population meets the criteria for a full clinical diagnosis of NPD.
Okay.
However, someone doesn't need to check every single box in the DSM to completely destroy your life.
Right. I mean, someone can operate just below the threshold of a full clinical diagnosis, but still utilize like every single one of the weapons we're about to outline.
Absolutely. The damage is the same.
The damage to your nervous system is virtually indistinguishable. So who are they using these weapons on? Who is like the ideal target? Because the source material gets very specific here, highlighting that narcissists are fundamentally attracted to empaths.
Yeah, they are.
People who are compassionate, sensitive, giving, and deeply loyal.
It makes perfect predatory sense when you view relationships as a resource exchange. A narcissist requires a constant, infinite source of validation, patience, and forgiveness, right? And an empath is naturally inclined to provide exactly that. When someone behaves badly, an empath's first instinct isn't to just walk away.
No, it's to try and understand why that person is hurting.
Exactly. They make excuses for bad behavior. They try harder to fix the dynamic. They look inward and blame themselves for this when things go wrong.
So the empath's greatest strengths, their compassion and their capacity to forgive, are literally weaponized against them.
Precisely.
Which means if you're listening to this and you consider yourself a giver or, the person in your friend group who always tries to see the good in everyone, this deep dive is your first line of defense.
They have to be.
Because to understand how someone with that much emotional intelligence gets trapped in a toxic web, we really have to look at the opening move. And terrifyingly, the opening move doesn't look like a trap at all.
No, it doesn't.
It looks exactly like a fairy tale.
The initial phase is entirely designed to feel like destiny.
Which brings us to the first tactic in the source, love bombing.
Yes. Phase 1.
When a narcissist enters your life, they don't just ease in over a couple of casual coffee dates. They flood your entire existence.
It's an absolute flood.
We're talking constant texting, grand romantic gestures, showing up at your work, overwhelming you with affection, and engaging in what the source calls future faking.
Right, future faking.
Which is talking about your future together as if it's already written in the stars on day 4 of knowing each other.
Yeah, and future faking accelerates the bonding process artificially. They project this shared fantasy to bypass your normal relational defense mechanisms.
Oh, that makes sense. So you just drop your guard.
Exactly. You suddenly feel like you've never been so seen, so intimately understood, so undeniably special. They will often explicitly tell you that you are entirely different from anyone else they've ever met, kind of framing you as their ultimate savior or missing puzzle piece.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. Love bombing is basically like walking to a casino, and the moment you step onto the floor, management comes over and lets you win massive, unbelievable hands of blackjack right off the bat.
That's a really good analogy.
The casino's goal isn't to give you money. Their goal is to get you so emotionally high, so addicted to the rush of winning, that you refuse to leave the table later when you inevitably start losing everything.
And that analogy perfectly tracks with the neurology at play here, actually.
Wait, really? The neurology?
Yeah. When you are flooded with that much intense, targeted affection, your brain experiences a massive spike in dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter responsible for reward, motivation, and pleasure.
So it's literal brain chemistry.
It is. They're effectively hacking your brain's reward circuitry. Clinical psychologists refer to this as manufactured intimacy.
Manufactured intimacy. Wow.
Because genuine, organic human connection takes time. Right. It requires mutual vulnerability, shared history, and trust that's built through observing consistent behavior over time.
Right. Seeing how they act on a rainy Tuesday, not just a romantic vacation.
Exactly. What is happening during love bombing is raw behavioral conditioning.
They are literally training your nervous system. Like they are the drug dealer, and the drug is manufactured validation.
And the speed of it is the point. They must create deep emotional dependency before the mask slips.
Because they can't keep it up forever.
Right. But there is a secondary, highly calculated social reason for this speed, too. By love bombing you so intensely and so publicly, they ensure that you will become their greatest PR agent to your friends and family.
Oh my gosh. Wait, so
You will introduce them to your social circle as the most amazing, perfect person you've ever met.
Oh, wow. So you were basically building the cage yourself, and you're inviting all your friends over to admire the paint job before the door locks.
That is exactly what happens, because later on, when the abuse inevitably starts and you try to seek help, your support network only knows the perfect version of this person.
The guy who brought everyone donuts and paid for drinks.
Right. It creates a massive barrier to leaving because it makes it that much harder for your friends to reconcile the monster you are describing with the charming, generous person you introduced them to.
That is so insidious. But, okay, once that biochemical hook is fully set and the social groundwork is laid, the narcissist has the security they need.
Yes, the trap is set.
Now, they can begin the real work, which is systematically dismantling your reality to keep you compliant. And that leads directly into the second tactic, gaslighting.
A term everyone uses, but few truly understand.
Right. The term actually originates from the 1944 film Gaslight, where this husband deliberately dims the gas-powered lights in their home and then actively denies it's happening when his wife points it out. He's literally trying to convince her she's losing her mind.
It's a classic example.
In practice today, this is just denying reality on a daily basis. It's phrases like, "I never said that. You're imagining things. You're just being way too sensitive."
And it is arguably one of the most psychologically devastating things one human being can inflict on another, because it directly attacks the fundamental mechanism by which we navigate the world, our ability to trust our own sensory perception and memory.
Okay, let's ground this in a real scenario, because I think people struggle to understand the mechanics of this. How does a completely rational, intelligent person fall for this?
That's a good question.
Because let's say we have an argument, right? I vividly remember you saying, "I'm going to cancel dinner with your parents."
Okay.
The next day, I bring it up, and you look at me dead in the eye and say, "I never said that. I said I was tired. You always invent these conflicts." If I know what I heard, how do you actually convince me that I didn't? How does a rational person buy that?
Well, the effectiveness of gaslighting hinges entirely on the trust that was established during the love bombing phase. You wouldn't accept this reality bending from a stranger on the street. Right?
Yeah, I just think they were crazy.
Exactly. You accept it from someone who has spent months convincing you that they are your soulmate. When someone you trust at a foundational level looks you in the eye and tells you with absolute unwavering conviction that your memory is flawed, your brain experiences profound cognitive dissonance.
It's just a complete short circuit.
It is. And it's often easier for the human brain to doubt its own memory than to accept the terrifying alternative.
Which is that the person they love most in the world is systematically, maliciously lying to their face.
Exactly.
That is deeply unsettling. You literally choose self-doubt over the trauma of betrayal.
The source mentions Dr. Robin Stern, a clinical psychoanalyst, who mapped this out beautifully into 3 distinct stages of gaslighting.
Okay, what are the stages?
The first stage is disbelief. This is when the narcissist tells that blatant lie about the dinner plans, and your initial reaction is just confusion. You think, that's weird, we must have miscommunicated.
We don't jump straight to malice.
Right. You don't assume malice. You give them the benefit of the doubt, fueled by the residual goodwill from that love bombing phase.
But eventually those little miscommunications have to pile up, right? And that's when you transition into the second stage, which the source calls defense.
Yes. And defense is exhausting. This is where the victim starts arguing back.
Okay.
You start gathering evidence. You pull up text messages. You try to logically, rationally explain why you are right.
Yeah.
Desperately trying to get them to just acknowledge the objective truth.
Like, look, I literally have the text right here.
Exactly. But a narcissist will never yield. They will double down, they'll twist your words, and accuse you of attacking them. The goal of this stage isn't for the narcissist to win the argument on facts.
No.
No. The goal is to drain your energy.
Wow. You're spending hours debating whether the sky is blue, and by the end of it, you're too exhausted to even look up.
Perfectly said.
Which pushes you into the third stage.
Depression, or what psychologists formally call learned helplessness.
Learned helplessness. I've heard that term.
The concept actually comes from experiments in the 1960s where animals were exposed to inescapable, unpredictable stress. And eventually, they just stopped trying to escape, even when a clear exit was presented to them.
Oh, that's heartbreaking.
It is. In a human relationship, after months or years of having your reality denied, after fighting and losing 100 exhausting battles over what is real and what isn't, Your brain simply gives up to conserve energy.
You just wave the white flag.
You accept their version of reality because fighting it is too painful. Your confidence in your own memory, your own judgment, and your own emotions is completely eroded.
You surrender your internal locus of control. The narcissist basically becomes the singular authority on the truth. They dictate what happened yesterday, what your intentions were, and how you should feel about it.
That is the ultimate goal of gaslighting.
But looking at the rest of these tactics, controlling your internal mind isn't quite enough for them, is it? To maintain total control, they also have to manipulate your external environment so you never get a reality check from anyone else.
That's right.
So once you're internally confused, they isolate you externally.
Which is the exact function of the third tactic, triangulation.
Okay, let's unpack triangulation. This is basically the introduction of a third party into the dynamic to create an artificial sense of competition and insecurity.
Yeah.
It could be an ex-partner, a coworker, a friend, or even a completely fictional, vaguely defined group of people. Like the narcissist drops casual little bombs like, my ex never used to nag me about this, or I was talking to Brenda at work and she totally agrees with me that you overreacted.
And we have to ask why they go through the effort of manufacturing this specific dynamic.
Right. Why bring Brenda into this?
Because a narcissist views your security as an existential threat. Security breeds independence, self-worth, and a stabilized nervous system.
Which makes you harder to control.
An independent, secure person is incredibly difficult to manipulate. Triangulation shatters that security.
So what does this all mean for the victim? You are unknowingly cast in a reality TV dating show inside your own relationship.
That's exactly what it feels like.
You're just like trying to make breakfast and suddenly you feel this looming ambient threat of elimination. You are competing for the affection that was given to you so freely and unconditionally during the love bombing phase.
And returning to that reality TV analogy, remember that the environment is entirely controlled by the producer, the narcissist.
Oh man, they're pulling all the strings.
By introducing this third party, they create an artificial scarcity of affection. Anxiety becomes a control mechanism, but the most insidious function of triangulation is external isolation.
I see that. Because if they're constantly comparing you unfavorably to a friend or a coworker saying, you know, Brenda is so much more laid back than you aren't exactly going to go to Brenda for advice.
Exactly. You begin to view potential support systems as threats, as competition. You withdraw from your friends. You become hyper-focused on the narcissist, desperately trying to prove you are better than the phantom third party.
So you're entirely focused inward on the relationship.
Yes. This severs your ties to the outside world. It cuts you off from the very people who might be able to look at your situation objectively and say, hey, this isn't normal. You're being abused.
Okay, let's take inventory of where the victim is right now.
It's a dark place.
It really is.
Yeah.
You're isolated from your friends. You don't trust your own memory because of the gaslighting. And your nervous system is completely fried because of the anxiety of triangulation. You are primed, you're softened up, and you are ready for the relationship to enter its most actively destructive phase. Tactic 4, devaluation.
This is where the pedestal crumbles, and it leaves the deepest psychological scars. Devaluation is the systematic, relentless tearing down of the victim's self-worth.
The person who 6 months ago told you that you were the most extraordinary human being they had ever met is now criticizing your core identity. But looking at the source, it's rarely a sudden shift into screaming insults, is it? It's more subtle. It's a dismissive sigh when you're talking. It's an eye roll when you talk about your day. It's minimizing your achievements at work. It's death by 1,000 cuts.
And the subtlety is what makes it so lethal,
Yeah.
because it gives them plausible deniability. If you complain about a sigh or a patronizing tone, they can revert right back to gaslighting. They can just say, I just sighed, why are you so crazy and hypersensitive?
Let's play devil's advocate for a second here.
Sure.
If someone treats you terribly, if they are constantly putting you down and rolling their eyes at you, human instinct is to walk away. Why wouldn't the victim just pack up and leave the moment the insults and the devaluations start?
Because we cannot view the devaluation in a vacuum. By the time this phase begins in earnest, the victim is already suffering from learned helplessness.
Right, they're exhausted.
Furthermore, the contrast with the love bombing phase is the trap itself. The victim remembers the golden period. They remember how perfect it used to be. And because they are an empath, someone who naturally looks inward for solutions, they assume they must be the ones who ruined it.
Oh, that is so tragic. They think, like, if I just try harder, if I lose 5 pounds, if I never bring up my negative feelings, if I become the perfect partner, I can unlock that soulmate again.
That's exactly the thought process. So the victim actively shrinks. They become smaller, quieter, more agreeable, endlessly striving for an approval that is never going to return.
Because it was never real.
Exactly. Because the approval was never real in the first place.
Yeah.
The devaluation isn't happening because the victim did something wrong. It's happening because the narcissist requires the victim's insecurity to regulate their own internal state.
This is a huge point. A narcissist who is completely satisfied with a partner who is secure and happy has no leverage.
When
If you feel good about yourself, they have nothing to push against. Your chronic insecurity is quite literally their primary power source. You are a battery, and they are draining your life force to keep their fragile ego inflated.
the relationship is fundamentally parasitic. That's the reality. And when that parasite feels challenged, say the victim tries to establish a boundary or simply fails to submit perfectly to the devaluation, the narcissist deploys a weapon of profound emotional cruelty.
One that requires zero physical effort but inflicts maximum physiological damage.
Yes,
Tactic 5, the silent treatment. The weaponization of silence.
it's devastating.
It's basically emotional solitary confinement used as a direct punishment. The narcissist just disappears. They stop responding to texts. They become completely unreachable, or even worse, they're in the same house, but they look right through you as if you were a ghost.
Yes, the stonewalling.
They refuse to even acknowledge your existence.
This is where we really have to look closely at the biological realities of human attachment. The source mentions brain imaging studies that have revealed something absolutely astonishing about the silent treatment.
What do the scans show?
The experience of social rejection and emotional abandonment activates the exact same neural pathways in the brain, specifically the anterior cingulate cortex, as physical bodily injury.
Wait, really? So when people say heartbreak hurts, it's not just a metaphor.
It is not a metaphor.
The brain processes being ignored by someone you love the exact same way it processes a physical blow.
The pain is biologically real.
Yeah.
Human beings are fundamentally wired for connection, right?
Right.
It is an evolutionary survival mechanism.
Because we needed the tribe to survive.
Exactly. In our ancestral past, being shut out of the tribe meant literal death. So being suddenly shut out by your primary attachment figure signals a severe threat to your survival. Your nervous system goes into absolute overdrive.
Wow.
The narcissist is inflicting genuine, measurable, physiological agony.
And it forces the victim to chase them. The anxiety becomes so unbearable that you start apologizing for things you didn't even do, just to get them to look at you again, just to make the excruciating silence stop.
And that dynamic, the agonizing pain of the silence, followed by the immense, overwhelming relief when the narcissist finally breaks the silence and lets you back in, that is the core mechanism of what we call a trauma bond.
Okay, let's really dig into the mechanics of a trauma bond. Because it's a term thrown around on social media a lot, but the underlying neuroscience is fascinating and terrifying.
Think of it as a highly potent chemical addiction, built on an intermittent reinforcement schedule.
Intermittent reinforcement, like a slot machine.
Exactly like a slot machine. When the silent treatment begins, the victim's brain is flooded with cortisol, the primary stress hormone. You're in a state of high anxiety, panic, and distress. Your brain is screaming for relief.
Right.
When the narcissist finally speaks to you again, when they finally offer just a tiny crumb of affection or forgiveness, your brain responds by releasing a massive flood of dopamine and oxytocin.
So the dopamine spike happening in a state of high stress creates a much stronger neural pathway than it would in a normal, calm state.
Precisely that. The stark contrast between the agonizing withdrawal and the sudden chemical reward binds you to the abuser at a cellular level.
They are the cause of your profound pain, but they have also positioned themselves as the singular cure for that pain.
Yes, the relief you feel when they forgive you reinforces the bond, making it incredibly difficult to break away, even when your logical prefrontal cortex knows the relationship is completely toxic.
But let's say the victim manages to access that logical brain. They are exhausted, they are in pain, but they finally gather the strength to demand accountability.
It happens.
They approach the narcissist and say, ignoring me for 4 days is abusive. You cannot treat me this way anymore. According to the architecture we're exploring today, they don't get an apology.
Oh, definitely not.
They run headfirst into a completely disorienting defensive wall. Which brings us to tactic 6, projection.
Projection is the ultimate cognitive smokescreen.
A smokescreen.
Psychologically, projection is a defense mechanism where a person takes their own unacceptable thoughts, feelings, or behaviors and subconsciously or consciously attributes them to someone else.
So they throw it back on you.
It prevents their fragile ego from collapsing under the weight of their own flaws. In practice, the narcissist who is secretly cheating will aggressively accuse you of being unfaithful.
Wow.
The narcissist who is manipulating your reality will look you dead in the eye and say, "You are the most manipulative, toxic person I've ever met."
It's beyond maddening. I mean, think about it. You spend weeks building the courage to bring up a completely valid, documented grievance. You have the text messages. You are ready to have a rational conversation.
Ready to prepare for it.
And within 30 seconds, the script is entirely flipped and you are suddenly put on trial for the exact crime they committed.
We have to look at why this works so effectively as a tactic of evasion. When a narcissist suddenly projects their own horrific behavior onto you, what is your immediate, instinctual, biological reaction?
Oh, immediate defense mode. My adrenaline spikes and I say, no, I'm not. I didn't do that. How could you even think that?
And right there, the trap snaps shut. You immediately shift into playing defense attorney for your own character.
Oh my God.
You spend all your emotional energy explaining yourself, proving your innocence, trying to logic them out of their absurd accusation. And while you are doing all of that, while you are completely consumed by defending your integrity, what is the narcissist doing?
They are sitting back, completely unchallenged.
Yes,
The original issue I brought up is totally forgotten.
the smokescreen worked flawlessly. They successfully evaded all accountability. They get to continue their abusive behavior, and you are left exhausted, disoriented, and once again, desperate trying to prove your worth to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you.
But okay, let's imagine a scenario where the victim finally sees through the smokescreen. The illusion breaks. They recognize the projection, the trauma bond of the silent treatment, the devaluation, the triangulation, the gaslighting, and they see the love bombing for the manipulation it was. They see the entire architecture of the cage.
The light bulb goes on.
They pack their bags, they establish hard boundaries, they block the phone number, and they walk out the door. The nightmare is over, right?
Unfortunately, no.
Oh.
The danger is far from over.
Which brings us to the tactic we teased at the very beginning of the deep dive. The one most people don't see coming because they think distance equals safety.
You do.
Tactic 7, hoovering, named after the Hoover vacuum cleaner.
Because just when you think you have finally escaped, just as your nervous system begins to regulate and you start to actually remember who you were before they dismantled you, they attempt to suck you right back into the void.
It usually happens after a period of no contact, right?
Yeah.
You've had weeks, maybe months of peace. And then out of nowhere, it begins. A late night text. I've been doing a lot of thinking. I miss you. Or they escalate grand gestures, showing up at your workplace with flowers, sending expensive gifts.
Or they use triangulation again.
Oh, how does that work?
Using mutual friends to pass along a message that they are struggling, or that they finally had this massive epiphany. The core message is always identical. I have changed. I see what I did wrong. The time apart made me realize you are the love of my life. Just give me one more chance.
It's so manipulative, but it is the most vulnerable, dangerous moment in the entire cycle of narcissistic abuse.
It absolutely is.
Because I have to ask the most difficult question here, the one that every single victim in this situation asks themselves at 2 a.m. when that text comes through.
And what's that?
What if they really have changed? What if losing me was the wake-up call they needed, and this time the apology is genuine? I mean, human beings can grow, right?
We have to rely on clinical research and established psychological data here.
Yeah.
And the clinical reality is absolute. The core patterns of narcissistic personality disorder do not change without years, often a decade or more, of intensive, specialized therapeutic intervention. And even then, true, lasting structural change to their personality is incredibly rare.
So a couple weeks apart isn't a cure.
An epiphany over a 3-week breakup is not going to cure a structural empathy deficit.
So if it's not a genuine change of heart, what actually is it?
Hoovering is a tactical maneuver. It is simply a signal that the narcissist's current source of validation, wherever they were getting their narcissistic supply after you left, has run dry.
Oh, wow.
Their new partner might have seen through them, or they suffered a blow to their ego at work. They are psychologically hungry, and they have come back to a familiar, reliable, well-conditioned source to refuel.
So it's not love, it's just resource extraction.
Exactly. It is resource extraction. It is not love.
To everyone listening to this right now, recognizing this final trap is your ultimate key to staying free. Because if you let them back in, the fairy tale love bombing phase might return for a week or two, but the cycle will accelerate.
It always accelerates.
The devaluation will happen much faster, the gaslighting will be more severe, and the silent treatments will be longer. Why? Because underneath the fake apology, they are actually furious that you dared to leave them in the first place.
Yes.
And they are returning to punish you for the injury you caused their ego. Recognizing hoovering as a calculated strategy rather than a romantic movie moment strips it of its emotional power.
Once you see the mechanics behind the magic trick, the illusion loses its hold on you.
We have covered an immense amount of heavy, complex psychological ground today. So let's do a quick, rapid-fire recap of the architecture we've uncovered so you have these 7 tactics locked in your mind.
Good idea.
Tactic 1. Love bombing. The overwhelming manufactured flood of affection designed to hack your dopamine and create a rapid emotional bond. Tactic 2. Gaslighting. The systematic denial of your objective reality to induce learned helplessness. Tactic 3. Triangulation. Introducing a third party to create anxiety and isolate you from external support. Tactic 4. Devaluation. The gradual, cruel tearing down of your self-esteem to ensure you remain insecure and compliant.
And then moving to tactic 5, the silent treatment. Emotional abandonment weaponized to cause genuine physiological pain and forge a chemical trauma bond.
Right.
Tactic 6, projection. The cognitive smokescreen of accusing you of their own toxic behaviors to force you onto the defense and evade all accountability.
And finally, tactic 7, hoovering. The calculated predatory attempt to suck you back in just as you begin to heal, masquerading as genuine change. If you are listening to this and you recognize these patterns, whether it's in a romantic relationship, a friendship you've had for years, a dynamic with a family member, or even a boss at work, there is a core message we want to amplify right now.
You are not crazy.
You are not too sensitive, your memory is not fundamentally broken, and most importantly, you are not the problem.
Validation is the ultimate antidote to gaslighting. What you experienced was real, it was calculated, and naming the abuse for what it is, understanding the clinical machinery behind the behavior is the very first step in reclaiming your internal locus of control and stripping the abuser of their power over your reality.
I want to leave you with a final thought, something to mull over that builds on the psychology we've explored today. Early on, we noted that narcissists specifically target empaths because of their boundless compassion, their willingness to forgive, and their instinct to heal others.
Right.
The narcissist views that high level of empathy as a vulnerability to be exploited.
A rich emotional resource to be mined until it's completely empty.
Exactly. But what if the ultimate defeat of a narcissist isn't just an empath finally managing to survive and walk away? What if it's the empath realizing that their deep empathy isn't a vulnerability at all?
Oh, I like where this is going.
What if it is actually a superpower? Think about it. If a manipulative person entirely relies on your empathy, your forgiveness, and your self-doubt to fuel their manipulation and keep their fragile ego inflated, then learning to establish a hard, unbreakable boundary isn't just a defensive move to protect yourself.
No, it's not.
It is a highly offensive maneuver. It is cutting the predator's gas line entirely.
That is a really profound shift in perspective, taking the very trait they sought to exploit and weaponizing it as a boundary.
So leave with this question. What happens to a parasite when the host finally learns how to starve it?